All right. So as promised, our interview with Bob Ryan, episode 50 for us. Crazy. But here we are. So obviously it feels kind of silly giving you an intro. All of our audience should know who you are, Bob Ryan. We all mostly know you from your work with the Boston Globe, just a basketball guru, one of the greatest sports writers of all time, really. Wanted to again thank you for hopping on with us, Bob. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. Like everybody else, just
Good.
Trying to figure out how to amuse myself day by day.
No kidding. It looks like you had enough books in the background to keep you busy for a little bit, hopefully. I assume you author probably half of those, or
I would say, given that some of them go back literally now 60 years, I've read, I would say 80% of those books, thoroughly at some point or other.
Yeah.
And that you can't see, that doesn't include all the reference books that are there. There's a enormous amount of reference books and old sports magazines. And,
cool.
There's 8 baseball prospectus up there in the corner you can't see. And all kinds of encyclopedias of sport. And as well as all the books that you can see.
We're not far off, Bob. I have 2 books in my living room, and I've read about 50% of those.
Not too bad at all.
All right, you'll give me a little time to catch up.
Yeah, exactly. Let me ask you a question, Bob, to kind of kick us off here. So you've obviously been covering sports, Boston sports, for quite some time. Take us back. What's really one of your first memories of either a specific team, an event, a time in history of one of the real stories you remember covering?
Well, my Boston sports fandom, I got to Boston in 64 as a freshman at BC, and I was excited to go to the Boston Garden as it was a very exotic, thrill. And I actually saw a Bruins game before I saw a Celtics game, only because of the schedule. Bruins opened up earlier, and I went to a Bruins game. They played the Red Wings. I was very excited to see Gordie Howe in person. Yeah. And I was able to move down from my seat to a better seat than that night, I remember. And then about 3 nights later, on October, I think it was the 17th of 1964, the Celtics opened up against the Pistons. And I went to the game, and I still have that ticket stub. And when they took the floor up for the final time in 1995, after they were beaten by the Magic in that series, and they were taking up the floor for the final time, I went to that seat and had my picture taken by the Globe photographer, which hangs in our living room.
Oh, wow.
That's awesome. Looking down over my shoulder as they're picking up the floor for the final time in the old Garden. Yeah. But my fandom, and I was not a Celtic fan.
Where are you from originally?
Trenton, New Jersey. I was not a Celtic fan. I was not a huge NBA fan. I was a college fan. I was a college-bred fanatic. But you want to respect the fact that I'm in Boston with the Celtics at the height of their glory, And I went to games, and my friends and I, who were basketball fans, what we basically did when the schedule came out was circle the double headers. They always had double headers, in those days, and the Philadelphia games because of Wilt, and the Laker games because of Elgin and Jerry. And we would go to the second balcony at the Boston Garden for $2, and go to those games specifically if we were going to go anywhere. And I was able to get tickets for the last game at this Game 7 in '66, Reds' last game, and that was after. Now, this is, believe this or not, that's true. After Game 6, which was in LA, the Lakers tied the series up 3-3. The game was not 7 was not a sellout. It was a 2-2-1-1-1. Okay, 7 was not a sellout yet. We decided we would send someone down to the Garden to sleep overnight in the Garden, which was to be ready in line in the morning to buy tickets. And you could buy 4, and he would get one of the tickets, and we had a dorm lottery for the other 3. And I got one of them. So that's why I was present for that game when the Celtics beat the Lakers in 7, Red Auerbach's last game. But I still wasn't a Celtic fan. I rooted against them. 67, when the 76ers beat them, I was thrilled.
Sure.
My Boston fandom began in 1967 with the Red Sox. Now, I had paid very little attention to the Red Sox in the first 2 years I was around. In 1965, they drew 650,000 people. In 1966, they were up to 800, and they had a good second half of the year, but still it was a really down period of Boston baseball. And then everything coalesced, and you've heard 1,000 stories about 67, and they're all true. That's the dividing line in Boston Red Sox history. That's when they rekindled interest in baseball. That's when Fenway stopped being like the old sofa at Grandma's house and became the baseball cathedral again. And that's when people rediscovered baseball in Boston. and 67. And everything from then on took us to where we got in the 21st century. So that's when I became, that's the first Boston team I actually rooted for. It was the 67 Red Sox, but I still didn't root for the Celtics. And the first time I rooted for them was in 69 against the Lakers, the dastardly Lakers, in that famous series when the old guys were, can finish fourth in the regular season. They beat the Knicks, they beat the 76ers. Not in that order, but the 76ers beat the Knicks and they beat the Lakers. Never dreaming on that May night when they won that championship in 69 that I would be covering opening night for the Boston Globe 4 months later. 5 months later.
Is that the game where they had the balloons ready to go?
Pardon me?
Is that the game where the Lakers had the balloons ready to go?
Game. That's the balloon game. And Jack Kent Cook, owner of the Lakers, had the balloons ready to go. They had the Southern Cal band, and they were going to release those balloons when the Lakers won that game. And of course, Bill Russell and Sam Jones and Havlicek and Nelson had other ideas. And that was Russell's last game. Went out with 21 rebounds. And of course, controversially, Wilt took himself out of the game and got hurt, and he wanted to go back in, and Bill Van Bredikoff didn't want to put him back in. And that was all kinds of fun. And Nelson hit the shot that bounced up and came down and sealed the game. And that's the balloon game.
Cool. Actually, I have a question, because we're lucky enough to have you on. People like Soapy and I mean, we're in our early 30s, obviously basketball fans. When we hear names like Bill Russell, Wilt Chamberlain, we just see the stats, on paper, which are mind-blowing enough.
Yeah.
What was it like actually watching those guys play, in their heyday, putting up
when you
50 and 30 games?
It is my honest and fervent belief that if Bill Russell were airlifted back into today's game, the same everything, the whole package, the physical ability and of course the mental ability, that he would do two things. He wouldn't win 11 championships. He'd win a few because the world's different now, and the whole path is very different. But he would lead the league in rebounding and block shots every year. He would routinely lead the league in rebounding and block shots. And people say, well, look at that body. He was 6'9". He was an athlete so far ahead of his time, guys. He was ahead of his time. I mean, he changed the game. He put the block shot into basketball. He put intimidation of that type into it. It wasn't done that way before. When he was drafted in 56, there were people who didn't think that much of him because he wasn't the conventional big man of the day, which was score first, rebound a little bit, and block shots, alter shots. What's that? Who does that? Well, no one else.
Where's the whistle?
He did. He gave people an impression, a different way of playing the game. All right. Wilt was 7 feet tall. His weight fluctuated anywhere from 275 to 300, depending on what shape he showed up in any given year. And he was athletic as all. Both of them were athletes. They both jumped. Wilt, by the way, sprint. He ran a quarter mile. He threw the shot, and Russell was a high jumper. He was like a 6'10" high jumper. They were athletes. They did other things. And Wilt was an extraordinary athlete. I could tell you some of the stories that people talk about Wilt. Well, here's one. Ponder this. Eyewitness. He could palm a bowling ball. Now think about that.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. The only thing close to Wilt, the best comparison to Wilt for a frame of reference, and I stand by it, was Shaq. Shaq was physically, as a physical being, as an imposing physical being, Shaq is the Wilt of his time. And there is no current Wilt today. The best, the good bigs are different type of players. There's nobody like Wilt, and there's nobody like Shaq. The Diesel. There's nobody like him in the game today.
No.
Okay. They were those two were athletes ahead of their time. Obviously, the game was different, and we could go into that. But just specifically those guys. I do believe this. I wrote this in my book, and I believe this firmly. Everybody thinks that athleticism, i.e., running and jumping, is a modern phenomenon. I got news for you. I could put together a team of 12. I go to 15. I go to 12 guys who played at least 5 years of their career were spent in the 60s. At least 5 years. So it accounts for overlap guys like Havlicek and West and Rick Barry and so on and so forth. And Wilt debuted in 59 and he played till 73. Okay. That I would put on the floor against the best players today. And I would not worry that they couldn't be competitive. It'd be a hell of a series. There were athletes that were out there. And we didn't have the proliferation, and the game was different. And the game is oriented. The biggest fallacy, of course, has always been about the defense in the NBA. It's some nights it's very hard to score a basket in this league. Other nights it's easier, but the athleticism is channeled now into defense more than it was routinely in those days, and more habitually, and more sophisticated defenses. The coaching is different. The everything about that is different. But so anyway, those two guys they would be very, very comfortable in the game now. Now, Wilt, the game doesn't honor big men who don't go out and aren't stretch fives now.
Sure.
Everybody's a stretch five. Stretch four. First it was a stretch four, and now they're stretch fives.
Definitely.
And were there any Jokic's in the game in those days? No. Were there any Embiids? Were there any Karl Anthony? No, because now could they have done it if that was the currency and they needed to practice to do it? Of course they could, but that's not what you did. Right. That's not what you did. The game is different. It's oriented differently now.
Well, no, it's funny. We were joking / not really joking on a previous episode talking about, just imagine the response you would get. Like now, like the Lakers, they can legitimately drop ISO plays for Anthony Davis. Like imagine doing that in the 90s with like Patrick Ewing or like those guys you mentioned. It's unheard of.
When he had that game-winning shot against the Nuggets.
Yeah. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Someone properly said right away, that is 7-footer on 7-footer from 25 feet. Now, Jokic, had to come into the thing late, but he did contest the shot, and he certainly, and if he had missed that shot, what would he have said? Jokic got there and contested the shot and bothered the shot. He made a great shot at 7 foot. A 7-footer routinely making a shot over a 7-footer is a concept that would be like science fiction if we talked about that in 1969. Okay, no question. That's Jules Verne. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I mean, unimaginable stuff. That's these athletes today. This is the game. They practice, and that's what they're good at. But anyway, no. Anthony Davis is, and he's just, I won't say just getting started, but he ain't done. He's going to get better and better.
Yeah, for sure. So real quick point before we move on. Speaking of Wilt, and all his stats and numbers, there's certainly, plenty of talk that he put up some numbers off the court as well.
I think he exaggerated a bit.
You think?
In the book. He got a lot of notoriety for that book.
I don't know if it was just a stat stuffer or what, but yeah.
And let me just say in reference to the 20,000, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, folks, go ask somebody, go ask your dad or your Uncle Joe
Google it
about what 20,000 we're talking about. But I just heard a Casanova, the real actual historical figure Casanova, his conquest number was supposed to be 200. So I got a feeling Wilt's they've added a few zeros to Wilt's. Wilt added a few zeros.
Fair enough.
But he was.
You got to sell books. You got to sell newspapers. Yeah.
Hey, you hang around the right crowd in college. You probably are friends, and I'm sure you could identify Bob. You probably had a friend who claimed to be the Wilt Chamberlain of the group, anyways. So
we went to it. We were good Catholic boys at BC. We didn't talk like that.
Yeah.
There we go. Question about just out of curiosity, are you of the opinion that the 86 Celtics, is that your favorite team of all time?
Yes. And the game, I now do a new distinction. They're the greatest team, one season team of the pre-3-point mania era. And the game is so markedly different. The way the approach of the Warriors, the great Warrior teams, the approach of the teams today, the approach of the Rockets, the approach is obviously vastly different. All right. So the three was a minor part of the deal, and Larry exploited it as well as anyone of his time, using it strategically, not overdoing it. I think the most he ever made in a game was 5. I'm sure the most he ever took was like 8, But I'm going to tell you this about Larry, in case anybody wonders about what he would have done today. I have the documentation on this one. There was a road trip in the 85-86 in which Larry Bird went 25 for 36 on threes. Okay. So
not bad.
That wasn't bad. So therefore, he could make them, but you just didn't force yourself to take them the way they did. But 85-86 Celtics, the front line is the greatest front line that was ever assembled. And with Bird, Parrish, and McHale. McHale was unstoppable. Parrish was the not the forgotten one, but not the.
He's the third man of the big.
He's definitely the less heralded of the
Check
three.
out Robert Parrish's career some year and his field goal percentages. year in, year out, 50, 50, 50 every year. The only thing that changed with him and when he got to Boston was number of shots attempted, because as Larry and Kevin asserted themselves more, Robert got fewer touches. But Robert, that's the greatest front court of all time. Larry was at his peak, still healthy. Kevin was at his peak, still healthy. The backcourt, DJ was a tough guy, obviously. And Danny was the junior member of the firm, and Danny was a legitimate three-point shooter, terrific defensive player, and never gave up an easy basket. And but the trump card guys on that team, why I say they were better than the 87 Lakers, the 83 76ers, all the others that are in the discussion, and any of the Bulls teams, don't get me started on that, was Bill Walton coming off the bench. Now, there have been great six men, and we have great six men today. But they generally are one of two things. They're Lou Williams types of shooters coming off the bench at that position, or they're multi-position players at guard forward, as Havlicek was in his time as a six-man. And Bill Walton changed the game by coming in to play center and teaming with Bird. And Bill Walton with Bird wasn't even fair. It was like a joke. It wasn't fair some nights what they would be able to do. The two greatest minds of their time playing together, the best passing center of all time, with Jokic, by the way, knocking on that door. Trust me,
you think?
He's the best since Walton. And Bird being Bird, that team, and they were 40-1 at home, and they were just ridiculously good. And I think that's the best. But I'd like to see, I would say the greatest series that never was the 86 Celtics against the 87 Lakers. Once the 87 Lakers picked up Michael Thompson and the trading deadline, at the All-Star break, they added the dimension that made them really dangerous. And the Celtics were injured all year. It's a miracle they even got to the finals against the Lakers that year with all the injuries that they had. The Lakers were better that year, there's no question, but they were better because of the injuries to the Celtics. But I'd love to see a healthy 86 Celtics against a healthy 87 Lakers. That's a 7-game series I'd pay to see.
That's the junior Skyhook series.
Yeah,
right?
It is. And that game, if McHale controls a defensive rebound, if I miss free throw, that hook never takes place. But that's the what ifs of sports. There's always something that but for something, and that was the but there. If McHale could control that rebound, which he should have gotten, then the Magic wouldn't have gotten the ball back to take that shot, and the Celtics would have won that game. And who knows? Yeah.
So actually, good segue. I had a question for you. Speaking of guys like Bird and Magic, let me ask you this. Obviously, you've been covering the league, and then up until now, I'm going to go kind of 4 generations in a row. So Bird, Michael, Kobe, and LeBron. You've seen them all. You've covered them all.
Yep.
Who's the best? Who's your favorite? Any between those 4
Well,
guys?
obviously, I'm prejudiced. I mean, you got to see. Obviously, I have a proprietary feeling.
It's like you wrote a book about him, right?
I did a book, and I said once that when Bird walked into the league in 1979, I was 10 years into coverage, and I said it was as if I had signed up for an art course, not knowing who the teacher was going to be, and the door opened and in walked Michelangelo. And that's what I thought about watching what Larry Bird meant to basketball at that time, what he embodied in that one package of how to play this game properly. Bird, in terms of raw physical talent in this discussion, obviously it's Michael and LeBron. And they're the two greatest talented virtuosos, there's no doubt. And that argument will never be resolved from now on. If LeBron succeeds in winning his 4th, which I think we all agree is imminent, he will have done it with 3 different teams, actually 4, because the first incarnation of the Cavaliers had nothing to do with the second one. It's really 4 different units, 3 different franchises, but 4 different teams.
Yep. Great point.
Something none of the others can claim. They didn't have to, because Larry and Magic were with one team and Kobe was with one team, and Kareem changed teams once. Wilt changed teams twice, but 3 times actually. All right. Granted, Michael's a better defensive player than Larry. I'll give him that. So is LeBron. As great a passer as LeBron is, and he just led the league in assists, but he's got the ball 90% of the time. Larry Bird was a better passer than LeBron James overall. And Larry Bird did more with the ball in his hands in less than anybody ever. He got more done with fewer touches than anybody. See, Magic brought the ball up. He was a point guard. Michael had the ball a hell of a lot, much more than Larry did. Larry thought Larry thought 2 such passes ahead to where the ball was going to wind up if he got it. I mean, It was just a different way. He did something, and I'll say this to separate Larry from all the others, and that is this. He did something that the others never did once in their life, and I saw him do it more than once. Once in particular in Phoenix, I'll never forget. Larry Bird was able to control a game without taking a shot. The others, it all came down to what they were going to do by shooting. Michael particularly. Now LeBron maybe not so much, but he's
Michael liked to shoot.
Michael's everything about Michael was shooting first and passing. Okay, if I have to.
Yeah.
But Larry and LeBron, they're passers first and shooters second. Both of them. And Larry's a better outside shooter, obviously. But LeBron's a better athlete. If you get to the basket better, I'll give him that. Okay. Kobe, he's in there, and he's in the middle of all this. He's more like Michael in his physical ability and his mentality. He's the closest thing in the competitive nature to Michael that we've ever seen, because LeBron isn't like that. He's not a killer. Larry was competitive, but I wouldn't call him a killer. But Michael was a killer, and Kobe was a killer, almost to the equal of Michael. So I had to answer your question. If I had to go to war, I got to win with one tonight. You got to put the gun in my head, and the winner. I got to go Michael, and but because of that competitive nature was second to none, and combined with But obviously, I'd rather win with Larry because he's my guy. And that's the band part.
Yeah.
I like the you make a good point about how his passing separates him from even Magic and LeBron, because he had the ball so little. If you look up any of his highlights or his YouTube reels and stuff like that, most of his best passes are like tip passes or really quick things where it's not like, it's not bringing the ball up, but he's just really, I guess, cerebral with the approach.
He was a great entry passer too. Now it's not a prized art now because you don't have a pivot man. Not fewer people playing with their back to the basket, so pivot entry passes aren't in demand. But he was a phenomenal entry passer. Ask Kevin, ask Robert. And that's a needless art now. You don't need to be that way. That you don't have that. But he was as good as you could have at that, for sure. But I'll give it to, if it's available on YouTube. I don't know how extensive it is. Look up games 3 and 4 in Milwaukee in 1986, back to back in Milwaukee, and together the whole pastiche of those two games is everything about Bird, everything, including one great play where there was a loose ball. He went diving into the pack, and while on the floor, flipped overhead. He got the ball and flipped the ball overhead 25 feet to the basket for McHale for a dunk. Now it's just he made plays like that, routinely. And so it's the whole package there, but everything put together, including that's the game where he had made the 4 threes in the fourth quarter, and he walked off the floor with the ball in the air and his finger raised as the ball was going through the basket to end the game. It was a not garbage, but it was a pack on basket. Didn't win the game. They were up by whatever. But it was so dramatic. It was flair for the dramatic was phenomenal. And the story about the 3-point contest. It's really true. First one, he walked in, said, "Which one of you guys is finishing second?"
Yeah, great line.
And that was part of the fun of having Larry Bird around.
Yeah, it was great when they I don't know if you saw this a couple of years ago, when I think it was the second game of the Kyrie era, when Milwaukee they didn't bring the court back. They actually played a game there at the Mecca.
Yeah.
You see that? That was great.
Really, huh? I forgot that.
Yeah, it was this. Yeah. It was the night after the Gordon Hayward. I don't know if you saw this. He broke his foot in one game. Things haven't been the same since. But
I know. I wasn't watching that night, but I know. Of course, I know what happened.
Yeah.
The Mecca was fun. It was the funny thing about the Mecca was what people never saw. My lasting memory of the Mecca was the locker rooms. The locker rooms didn't look like normal locker rooms. They looked like theater dressing rooms. They had, how you have those footlights on the mirror. Those. That's what they had in the Mecca. It was unlike the look of the locker room, the so-called the dressing. It was a dressing room.
Yeah,
it wasn't
like a
locker
Show.
room. Yeah, it was. And of course, then the smell of the brats there. I mean, I always used to love going to Milwaukee.
Well, if you look up the capacity, I looked it up.
10,000 plus.
Yeah, it's crazy, which is about half of what the arenas are now. And then I remember when they were not rolling it out, but when they were interviewing guys, like pregame, especially in light of the Hayward injury, a lot of guys were like, we stepped out here for shoot around today. It was kind of slick, felt kind of slippery. And But it was
yeah.
really cool to see that. I kind of
when
wish
I
that,
started covering the league, so and we had these funky old arenas, Cobo Hall. Oh my God, in Detroit. Had a stage at one end, and it was totally it was totally funky. Portland.
That's what I was going to say. Portland,
the Memorial Coliseum, that was a loud place. I once wrote that that crowd was like locking 12,000 3-year-olds inside an apartment on a rainy day. That's what Portland was like. And I used to say they should have on the front of their jersey, PHS, Portland High School. They argued every call. Their boys, their guys could do no wrong. It was sweet, it was fun. It was part of the fun. The league had all these different places. Baltimore, the Civic Center had a stage as well, at the one end of the floor. I mean, it was Chicago Stadium had that wonderful theater organ that they've had. I don't know if you knew about that, but they had a theater organ, with the big pipes, looked like you're going to a cathedral. Yeah. And that was a sound. They had a sound in that building. They all had individual sounds. Madison Square Garden, the original one, had a sound that was unlike Chicago's sound, and or our sound. Oh, it was a funky league, and it's homogenized now, Yeah. I mean, it was business, but it's not as much fun.
Especially now.
Business. It's more business, except of course, all the trappings and all the music and the cheerleaders and all that. And still, even with all that, it was funkier and more fun in those other places.
If you look back at if you look at any highlights that were at the old Portland Coliseum and they zoom out enough, you can see that in the corners where the players would walk off the court, the doors look like the doors to a high school gym. Correct me if I'm wrong, but from a distance, there were those doors. I don't even know how to describe it, but when you walk into
the double
store
wide doors.
The double doors. And then I was thinking, number one, the finals were there in 92. Obviously they were there also in 77. And
they were there in 90 and 77 and 90 and 92.
Yeah. Which is crazy that Michael Jordan in his heyday played in that gym, which was, I think that one was, what was it? 12 to 14,000?
12,000 plus.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then they had an Olympic scrimmage.
That's where the Dream Team started its run, its journey in the Tournament of the Americas. And they started, and that's where it was in Portland. Oh yeah, that was an intriguing place to go. I got to tell you, one of my most memorable plays I ever saw in the NBA. Dave Cowens, you got to picture this. Dave Cowens goes chasing a loose ball, and he jumps over a bench, doesn't matter, the Celtic bench, onto, and goes right clear over the bench, runs behind the scorer's table, jumps back out over the Portland bench, and gets back into play at the other end of the court. It's like the picture of the car and the train, parallel.
Yeah.
And so when I think of Portland, that's my first memory of is Dave Cowens making a play unlike any other I've seen.
That's crazy. That's hilarious. I forgot all about some of the stories, and I have seen some of those videos, and you nailed it. It's almost like a zoom away from the court. The further out you get, the worse it looks.
There's also
vision.
If there's an angle when someone's taking a free throw and you can see the top of the arena, it almost looks like tile ceiling of a living room or something. I know it's obviously not, but it certainly looks a lot older. And I don't even think, was there a Jumbotron there, Bob?
No. That was pre-Jumbotron. I can't even tell you where the first one was.
That's a good question.
But it wasn't.
I think
there.
I would guess Palace of Auburn Hills.
Yeah, maybe, but I can't believe that thing is gone already. That's come and gone. That was 1989, and it's gone.
Yeah, right.
And that was changed all the architecture of indoor arenas. When they put the luxury boxes at halfway up rather than just at the top, and that was an architectural innovation. I remember, and I can't believe that, but it's frightening to think that it's already gone. But
Crazy. Let me ask you this, because actually this is interesting, and I'll be honest, I almost completely forgot about the story till I was reminded somewhat recently. I think it was either this month or last month. It was a 20-year anniversary of the Paul Pierce stabbing incident.
Wow.
Which I still think is one of the more, not like swept under stories. It's not talked about a lot.
Underplayed.
Underplayed is a good way to put it. You were obviously covering the team 20 years ago. What was that like that night when because that was before Twitter, that was before everything. This was an old-fashioned news.
It was just astonishing. You think that one of your your guys was involved in something like that. And what I had heard, and I mean, I'm sure you probably heard saying how close he came to. I mean, you're talking death. He could have been stabbed to death, and he was just lucky that knife missed. The vital part. Yeah. And I thought that year he came back too soon. I thought he was. You respect that he wanted to do it, but I really feared for him. I just thought he came back too soon. He hadn't got himself together. It's amazing that he rebounded to become,
future Hall of Famer.
That was his breakout season.
What I believe is, and I took so much shit for this, and I'm sorry, but it's true. And I people have to understand what I mean when I say it. He's the greatest individual offensive force the Celtics have ever had. He's the greatest guy that if you got to say, here's the ball, get it in the basket. Yeah. He had the most variety of ways to get the ball in the basket. Larry sometimes needed a pick. Paul, against
that's a good point.
He never needed a pick. Player. He can always get his shot. He can always create space for his jump shot. He had 3-point range. He was a great driver, great finisher. Mm-hmm. Don't foul him. He's going to shoot 85% from the free throw line. And clutch. How many times did we see him dribbling that ball down, at the end of a period or of a game, and let's go home. There it is. Yep. It doesn't he couldn't pass like Larry. He didn't have certainly, but he was the guy. He was better than Larry. He's better than Havlicek individually with the ball in his hands to score. Larry could do more with his passing naturally, but. He's a great player, but I just thought he came back too soon, and I was really happy that he was able to, have the career that he had.
So was that during the off season? It had to have been, right?
What? I'm not.
Summer.
I'm not.
I think through the month it was 20-year anniversary.
I just know it was the Buzz Club. That's all I know.
Yeah, and wasn't it something like I could have this wrong, but I think that he was with Tony Batiste. And
Tony Batiste saved his life pretty much.
There's because he was wearing Tony Batiste's
jacket. Then in that case, but. It's not.
It's a crazy story either way.
If you tell people out of context about this, a Celtic almost, they go, what? This must be the biggest story of all time. And it's like,
really?
Hey, it's like he sprained an ankle.
Right. Seriously. No. He's questionable with
almost
multiple
died, ladies and gentlemen.
Imagine that happened today. Even even someone mid-range, like Rondo. So anyone. Well, with Twitter, with everything, there's not only gonna be live tweets.
Daniel Tice.
Daniel Tice, good, perfect example. There's going to be video from the event. People are going to be tweeting about it. It's going to be all over NBA on TNT. It's going to be a news story, which is crazy. It's your point about Pierce and his ISO play and everything. I agree with you. And in my mind, as soon as you started talking about that, the only thing I see is that classic play on Al Harrington, right? A great call by Mike Gorman as well. Just coming up the ball. They're literally spitting on each other, jawing back and forth. Pierce buries it and then walks off the court.
Well, I'd say that Pierce, and there were two guys in this last 15 years, 20 years, that would have been absolute, and there's a third one now, but there were two in his time that would have been just as home in 1960 as 2020. Mm-hmm. Paul Pierce with the old man game that he had, with his own modern athleticism. But he had a game later in his career in the playoffs, and I remember writing that he bamboozled his way to 28 points last night, and you know what I mean? That the ability to draw fouls, and he was just, and the other guy was Ginobili. Ginobili had an old man's game too. But now we got a whole new species with Jokic. I mean, Jokic is right out of the Y in 1958, except he's 7 feet tall. And, it's just phenomenal. But Paul Pierce was very, very special player and an absolutely an all-time great Celtic. And it was fun to watch. I loved him.
Sure. Jokic is a funny one too, because remember, talking this season going into the bubble, he was one of the first bigger names to get COVID and during the layoff, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Then the pictures come out where he lost 100 pounds and then the playoffs start and he had one of the better playoff series I've seen in quite some time from a guy like that. 100%.
He had a terrific playoffs. I really, I didn't pick up on him as a rookie and a guy in Denver, I just didn't. And a guy in Denver called me to do a story about Jokic's passing and how good he was. And I had to say, I can't verify this because I really haven't seen the guy enough to get it. And boy, now, you know, I'm a paid up member of the fan club now, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I just like my dues, you know. I'm telling you, he's the best passing center I've seen since Walton, and that's the gold standard for me and many others. And then we read about his, you know, his ability to throw the long one and some of the passes he made, and he attributes it to his background as a water polo player. Who knew?
I certainly did.
Love that.
Well, hold on. We talked about Portland Coliseum a few minutes ago. You're just gonna leave Arvydas Sabonis out of the conversation?
No, I'm definitely a member of that fan club. I don't just think of the passing with him. I think of everything. But yes, he played a game. He played a game that I in the Olympics in Sydney in 2000 that I thought was a clinic. This is how you play the position. Yeah. Everything that he did, offensively, defensively, passing, scoring, setting picks. This is how you can play that position and maximize your ability to help a team win a game. It was a clinic as well as anything. I was saying, I'm a big fan of his, and I love his kid too. And you know, you know, that's a team. They're not going anywhere. You know, unless they can't rein in Oladipo and sign him up. Anyway, thank you for pointing that out. I mean, you're right. I love Sabonis. I'm very big on Sabonis. I always wish, I've said many times, I remember hearing about him, and they said when he was 18, 19, 20 years old, he was Bill Walton with a 3-pointer. And that's how he was described to me. And of course, and I saw, but by the time we got to see him in the NBA, that was many vats of vodka later. And a couple of Achilles injuries too, you know. Yeah. So you know, we didn't see that guy, that Bill Walton with a 3-pointer. We saw something, but it wasn't what they saw. The guy that beat us in Seoul, you know, that he was that's the guy they're talking about.
Yeah.
Question, just because you're you know, you've been around the game and sports media for so long, it seems like are you a fan of the NBA on TNT, that product?
Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you mean talking about the studio show?
And like Chuck thing? and Shaq and Barkley.
I have to. Yes, I am. I hey, and now they've taken it to another level with that video that, you know, with that big board that when Kenny Smith goes. I love it. And when he jumps on, come on, how can you not like it? And the rapport that those guys have, you know, I mean, particularly with Charles is obviously Charles, you know, yes, the answer is yeah. And Ernie is the perfect traffic copy. He knows exactly how to rein him in and let him go. And, you know, yes, I am.
Okay. So we're also huge fans of that show. Like as far as I can remember watching basketball, I've always watched Inside the NBA, even when it was like Kenny Smith was the first one, and then Charles, and then Magic was on there for a little bit. Anyways, they've always been perceived as these guys are very entertaining. They're going to give you some basketball, and they're also going to make jokes and kind of make light of each other. It feels like lately they've I don't know if you've seen this on Twitter, which is a great place to be, as I'm sure you can agree, that they seem to be getting a good amount of flack for like, oh, these guys aren't serious enough, or oh, Chuck likes to make jokes. And it's like, I was just curious what you think as a fellow member of the media, where to me it's like, well, these guys are up there to entertain and inform.
Positively. And I thought that was the whole stick. I was unaware of this. I'm sorry. You know, but nothing that you tell me that emanates from, you know, Twitter after anything will surprise me. You know, the stupid things are going to be said. No, I don't subscribe to that at all. I think they're fine. I hope they keep doing it for another 10 years.
Sure. I mean, I think that the bigger point is like, you know, there's shows like that, or do you really want to spend an hour and watch four guys just stat dump for, you know what I mean, 60 minutes and talk about this, and this? No, of course not. No one's going to want to pay attention to that shit. That's why, like you said, the Chuck and Shaq dynamic, it's entertaining, and B, they have the credentials to talk basketball.
When Kenny Smith goes up there, he's not. When he goes up there, they have fun with it, but he's always telling you something important. 100%. I mean, something that he's not doing it just to do it. You know, I mean, he's having a good time, especially when he jumps from the screen, you know, but behind the screen. But it's really good.
He gets lost sometimes when he gets in there. I
admire their ability to, you know, to just dissect the game and present it that way, and the way they do it. No, I absolutely, I'm a fan.
So speaking of television, you know, have your hand in television as well. You you do a lot of around the horn. You do fill in for PTI sometimes. What would you like better? More the PTI type of thing or the around the horn roundtable?
Well,
type
I
of
am
thing?
done with PTI. I mean,
Okay.
They've put me in the old folks home in the PTI. But, hey, I did it from 02. I was the first summer they needed a replacement. I did it up until 2 years ago. So that's fine. I had a great run, a 16-year run.
Yeah.
No complaints. Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah.
That's the most fun I've ever had in television.
Really?
PTI. Of all the stuff I've done. That's the most fun you can have. Now, what's the difference between that and around the horn? The ham factor. It's just the two of you. So it's showing off even more, you know? Yeah. So absolutely. I mean, that's the reason. I'll tell you flat out. It's an ego thing. It's just the two of you. And so and the staff, when I went down there the first day, in the summer of 2002, Tony Kornheiser, who's an old friend, said to me, he was on vacation, I worked with Dan Lebitard, by the way, on that first week that we did it.
Okay.
And he said to me, I want to tell you one thing. I can only promise you one thing. You will love the people you work with. And we're talking about names like Eric Rydholm, Matt Kelleher, and Mike Mateau at the time, and other people in the whole. And that turned out to be 100% true. It was such a pleasure to go into that office and interact and work with these people. And here's the amazing thing about that show that came on the air in 2002. Same executive producer, same primary producer in a volatile medium.
Yeah.
And those two guys, Tony and Mike, because of their magnetism and what they've been able to do, have provided a stable living for a group of people behind the camera, a whole bunch of them in the control room that they're raising kids and living lives and they're not losing. And that show has been an industry in and of itself. And it's a tribute to those two guys and how they've captured people's imagination. But the staff is great. And I loved every second of working there. And I'm still fortunate to be a part of Around the Horn. I was a charter member. And after being on the shelf for 6 months, I came back last Friday. Nice. And I was on Friday. I'll be back now on a semi-regular basis again until they don't want me anymore. And that's, but I enjoy it. And I'm not insulting them when I say I had more fun in PTI for the reason I'm telling you, Yeah,
sure. I think they can
the
respect that too. Without cheating, without looking, are you able to say how many Around the Horn wins you have under your belt?
No, really. They put that number. I had forgotten. No, I think it's it's under 200. I know that. So probably in the 150 to 160 range.
Who's like the all-time, do you think?
Woody's the champion.
I was going to say.
Woody's done more shows than anyone. I mean, I even though I was a charter member, there's a period of time I didn't do it at all when I was doing the Globe 10.0 thing I did for a year and a half, and I wasn't doing any Around the Horn, and so I had gaps, but I don't have the sheer number of shows that some others have. But I'm still a charter member. I call myself an OCM, an original cast member, along with Woody and Tim Calishaw. We're the three that are left, the original five.
Yep.
Jay Mariotti and TJ Simers were the other two originals.
Mariotti. Yep. Sarah Spain, I know I see on there a lot. Jackie McMullen does Boston too, right? But Jackie McMullen's on there. She used to be.
She's done more shows now than I have, I think.
Okay.
By the way, happy birthday! It's Jackie's birthday today.
Oh, shout out Jackie!
Happy birthday, Jackie!
Good for her.
Jackie Mack.
I met Jackie McMullen briefly at we're both University of New Hampshire graduates, and she made an appearance for basketball. It was when her book came out, or the book, the Magic
the Bird Magic book. Yeah.
Phenomenal book, by the way. Oh, phenomenal book. And she was doing some press and stuff like that. Couldn't have been nicer. Said like, hey, I basically said I have 5 minutes to answer some questions. I think she was there for like an hour and a half, just once the conversation went going. But cool. Happy birthday, Jackie Mack. What was I gonna say? Yeah, it sounds like reality runs a pretty tight ship over there.
The Tony story is really fascinating. He comes out of Fordham, and I don't know what he did before he got to ESPN, if not much, and he was supposed to be. He was the original stat boy with PTI, which was an idea that came up with 2 days before the show started, and then he did that, and he was doing. He was supposed to be a researcher. He was supposed to be behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And then Max Kellerman was the original host.
Yeah,
that's right. After good call. That's who it was.
6 or 8 months, his contract was up, and he left to go to Fox, and he had that ill-fated show, IMAX, with Michael Holley. Remember that?
I do.
All right. So Tony Reali, they gave him a trial period to fill in. He was 25 years old at the time.
Yeah, no, he was a kid.
And he had no television on-camera experience whatsoever, other than being stat boy.
Yeah.
Here he is, 17 years later.
Yeah.
And he's still there, and he's
Wild.
Tony Reale, and I think he's terrific at what he does. And
Great call.
That show's had remarkable stability, and as has PTI.
Yeah.
That time slot's been settled for all those years for them. So it's and the television, it's a remarkable story. It really is.
You said that Bob, you said you have a original piece of the Boston Garden hanging up in your living room, right?
I have a chair.
Photo.
Yeah,
the photo
in my living room. I got one of my chairs from the old garden that I bought, and when they tore it down, and I've got a piece of the parquet signed by Bill Russell, graciously given me by Wick Grosbeck when I retired Celtics. That was really amazing. So yeah, those are my Celtic souvenirs.
All right. Well, when you decide to hang it up at Around the Horn, you got to get a piece. Well, I don't even know what a piece of like the Around the Horn set would be. You got to get like one of the boom mics or take a picture next to like a camera or something.
I don't know something, but I'm just thrilled. I'm still available. I'm still part of the deal, and I keep waiting for them to say, "Well, we had enough of him." I keep waiting for some suit, to walk in and say, we had enough of that guy. Get rid of him.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it hasn't happened yet.
I wouldn't worry about that.
I know, Bob, we're running up on time here. So I've got, this is my last one. Favorite memory of the Garden, number one. And number two, just having been around Boston for so long and being a Red Sox fan, do you think it's time for the the Red Sox to revamp Fenway? Or I know that they're not going to, but those seats are so fucking uncomfortable. The capacity is like 35,000 compared to 50 at most ballparks. And it's an arm and a leg, and it's over 110 years old. Thoughts?
Well, the first question is obviously memories of games, and the most amazing experience still holds up 44 years later. And that is the triple overtime game with Phoenix. It was such an extraordinary evening of occurrences, of things that happened, including a referee being attacked by a fan on the floor, rolling around on the floor, Richie Powers and the fan.
Welcome to Boston.
But it was just an extraordinary evening. And I would have to be still ranked. And then the next 10, tied for 10 second place, 10 different things with Larry, and all that. So, okay. The Fenway thing. I'm a season ticket holder, have been since 1991. I know those seats you speak of. Believe me, I sit in them, and I know the footprint. I'd like to know. A good point you raised. Wrigley Field. Ever been there? I don't know if you haven't. Wrigley Field was built 4 years after Fenway, 1916, and they managed to redo that some years ago, where the box seat area is quite spacious, and in a way that Fenway is not in any way. I don't know how they did it. The footprint is so small there. I don't know. I'm not an architect. I don't know what they could do and not reduce the capacity significantly. They've expanded the capacity, it was 33,000 plus at one point before they added the monster seats and all the seats that they've added up on top.
Yeah. Monster seats came in 02, 03, I think.
39 now. And they've managed to find all those seats. I can't apologize for the seats. And the uncomfortable nature, bring a pillow, But I salute, you can find archive. I wrote my share of Fenway Has to Go columns before these people took over, and you can't do business there, and it is I used to say it was a ballpark built in 1912 for tiny people born in the 19th century, which is true. It's like the USS Constitution, it was an 18th century frigate, for when 5'8" was a big person, and Fenway is the equivalent of that. So I understand all that, but they've done a great job of maintaining its charm while modernizing it to an amazing extent. And we would have, I don't know.
Well, that's kind of my point.
I was wrong. I like having the ball.
Hey, let's be respectful of us 5'8" people, all right?
I wonder if it's almost kind of like a double-edged sword thing too, because I think not the nostalgia, but the history aspect of it, that's a big selling point too. Hey, coming to Fenway, it's a historical place.
It's the star.
Exactly.
They renamed it the baseball's most beloved, America's most beloved ballpark. Certainly. Wrigley's the friendly confines. So that they already took that one. America's most beloved ballpark. That's some marketing guy figured that out. Fine. And I think what I've been advocating for years is get that original description of Updike had in the Hub Fans Bid Kitted You about the lyric little bandbox of a ballpark and blah, 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 and have a big plaque and put it outside the entrance there. You might as well
Good idea.
They should do that. I really think they should do that. But it's a special place to go to a game. It's still, the ballpark is the star. God knows, this year, if that awful team, the ballpark would have been the only reason to go,
Great point.
We were spared having to get in there. So
certainly a great point. Let's wrap up here. So one question we ask all our guests, especially our local guests, we're both from, I don't know, have you spent any time in New Hampshire, Nashua, New Hampshire?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So there's a little bar called the Garden in Nashua, and they're known for some of their go-to sandwiches named after Boston athletes, personalities, whatever. I don't think there's a Bob Ryan sandwich on the menu. If there was, what would be the ingredients to the Bob Ryan?
Well, I would the perfect, I was a big fan of the Fours, which is closing.
Yeah.
And now the Bobby Orr steak and cheese was my go-to sandwich. Something like that. Otherwise, the Tony C, which was a veal parm sandwich, I like that too.
Okay.
But as a sub, all you have to do for a sub for me is ham and cheese and provolone and lettuce and mayonnaise, and I'm off and going. But
simple
that
enough.
Bobby Orr steak and cheese was that's my all-time favorite. So I'm going to say, you stick my name on that.
That's how you powered up right before you wrote a column.
Time when Burton's had that outlet on Boylston Street about 8 years ago, when I actually did name a sandwich after me temporarily. I'd fallen in love with a sausage sandwich that they had, and I told them, and they actually did for a few. I wish I had, commandeered one of those menus as proof.
Good call.
At the time. But that's the closest I've ever come. But
Right.
I'd be very honored to be remembered in that.
We'll put in a good word for you.
Favorite Fenway food, real quick. Favorite Fenway food as a season ticket holder.
I seldom eat. No, I believe in spreading I always eat outside the ballpark. I don't eat at the ballpark as a rule.
Great answer.
I don't. I always had my go-to places and many over the years, and I think you should eat outside the ballpark. They make enough money without having me give them more money on food. And I don't buy beer there. I don't do that. I just go to the ball game.
Nice.
Fenway.
You just get hammered before and then go to the game.
Yeah, that's right.
No, Fours was a great call. I was talking to my dad recently. Fours is one of my first memories. It was the Pats Colts AFC Championship game in the snow. So that was like early 2000s, probably like 10 or 12. I remember vividly going there with my dad. The place was packed, just order an appetite. I was too young to drink, obviously, but it was my first experience where I felt like I was at a stadium, but I wasn't. Like, everyone slapping high fives at the restaurant, the bar, everything. That was just a great memory for me. And when I saw that news come out, obviously COVID's hit thousands of small businesses locally. That was a big one for me. I don't know
if you're aware that
one's too close to home.
In its original incarnation, it was half the size, and it was the bar was on the right, not the left. And there was a little grill in the front window where they grilled hamburgers. That's all they had.
Oh, cool.
And then when these people took it over, they took over the property next door, knocked out the wall, built the Force as you know it, and made it into the icon that it became. But it actually predates that original Force. And it, of course, for people who don't know, it's named after Bobby Orr. That is where the Force comes. Not everybody really realizes that's where the Force comes from.
Oh, cool.
It was in honor of Orr.
Great place. Let's do this. Let's let you get going, Bob. Thank you for your time. Wanted to ask you before I let you go, where's the best place for people to find you, either online or everything you have going on?
I'm a Bob with 2 podcasts.
Okay.
Myself. The Sports Reporters podcast, Monday and Thursdays, we drop with Mitch, Albom, and Mike Lupica. We've been together we've been together 29 years in television. And we do it every Monday and Thursday, and we're an all-encompassing podcast. And then there's the Ryan Goodman podcast, which is exclusively basketball, which has floating. We don't have a set day. We go according to Jeff's schedule because Jeff's still working. I'm retired.
Right.
Jeff's still working. So we work around Jeff's busy schedule. But, Jeff works for Stadium, and Jeff does a lot of things, and he knows his college. And we kind of combine, the old guy and the younger guy, and we talk basketball. So that, and, hopefully I'll be back writing in the Globe when they, every other Sunday, which I was doing for, the last several years. But right now I'm in remission. But the 2 podcasts, and that keeps him busy.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, if anyone's earned some time to kind of retire and chill, it's you. But doesn't seem like that's doesn't seem like that's in your DNA too much. So, Bob, wanted to thank you again for spending some time with us, man. It was a great conversation, and we look forward to keep following you and hopefully maybe talk to you again sometime in the future.
Very good. That's right. We'll catch up anytime. That's good.
Thank you, Bob. Bob Ryan.